This episode of the Better 2 podcast is brought to you by Kitty Mystic and DM Needham, author of My Days with the Dark Muse, as well as Love is Worth Waiting For. Hi, gang. Donna here. Thanks for tuning into the Better 2 podcast. Today's guest is Moshe Mikanovsky. Moshe, well, he went on a journey that he decided to write a little bit of fiction about, but not fully about his life. So we talk about his journey of growing up in Israel and moving, and how when he was close to 40, he started questioning his faith and what he decided. So we talk about that, and we talk about his book. So I hope you enjoy the show. Hi, Moshe. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. So you had a major life choice, and your story, I'm going to jump right in because Your story is similar to what a book that you wrote.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk reality versus fiction at this point. It's about religion. So you were raised one religion, and you decided at a certain point that this isn't for me.
Yeah. And I was raised, so just a bit of background, who I am and how I was raised, etc. And then we can tie it up to the book. So I was born and raised in Israel in an Orthodox family, Jewish Orthodox, and it's a modern Orthodox. It's not like the ultra Orthodox. If you see some of the show on Netflix these days, they have a few shows that portray the ultra Orthodox. The Hasidim with the payas and the black clad and all of that stuff. But my background is more modern, and modern meaning that we do work in regular work, so we don't spend all our days in a shiva. We have TV at home. We wear like modern clothing and stuff like that. But we keep our Orthodox lifestyle. So I would wear a kippah always as a boy, and then when I grew up, I did go to a yeshiva, but then I also went to the army in Israel. We keep kosher, we do all the holidays and stuff like that. Now, this is a very, it's a strict upbringing on one hand, but on the other hand, it's also because it's modern, you are open to the world. But when I grew up, I went only to boys' schools. It was a religious school. We study half a day religious studies, and in the afternoon we would study general studies. I really didn't have interaction so much with the outside world. And then when I went to the army, that was when I was 18 and I went to the Israeli army, it was the first time that I really interacted with people that are not exactly like me. So
I had another guest who grew up in Israel. I believe he lived in Italy for a while. He became a male model, but he also served in the Israeli military. Mm-hmm. So he told me a little bit about it, but go ahead, tell us more.
Yeah. So although it's mandatory, to serve, the people that are ultra Orthodox, many times they don't serve actually. So they will have this exempt to go and study in a yeshiva for the men, and for women for religious reasons. But as modern Orthodox, I did go to the army. And it was a bit of an eye opener for me, but I still practice my religion, and I actually practiced the religion for many, many years after I married. My wife she's from a very similar background, also from a modern Orthodox family. We had 3 girls while we were still, practicing our orthodoxy, Jewish orthodoxy, and we. It wasn't like something that happened to me when I was young. It was more later in my life. We moved to North America with my job. In the army, I was a software developer, and then when I finished my service, I went to regular work, outside, and they sent me over to the US. I was in Michigan for 6 years, and then I had to, my visa expired, so I had to leave the States, and I moved to Canada, where I'm today in Toronto. And throughout that time, we lived in modern Orthodox environment with, many friends that were similar to us. And I had, I was nurturing doubts and nurturing questions about it as time was going by, but I was very conformative in my lifestyle. So, this is a lifestyle I knew. This is a lifestyle that I felt comfortable with. This is a lifestyle that my parents and my siblings and my in-laws and my everyone were practicing. So I was practicing it as well. And later on, I was probably around 36, 37, that I decided after, like soul searching, maybe towards my midlife crisis, who knows, but to see, is that really something that fits me? And I had to tell my wife, I have to tell my kids, and we explore things together. What does it mean? Like, if we change that lifestyle? And, the rest is history.
Well, and the thing is, when you're that age, you do start questioning things. It's like, well, is this really, was this what I really wanted? Or is this something because it's comfortable and I learned it and I grew up with it, that it just fits like an old shoe?
Yeah.
I understand a little bit what you're talking about, because in Chicago, we do have a large Jewish population near Skokie. And I used to have to drive right through there to get from my job to my apartment. So it would be very common to see people walking in the street dressed in full garb. And I know that's not the proper terminology, and I apologize, but I also don't want to say the wrong thing. My stepfather was Jewish, but he was born and raised here. His parents were from New York, and they had immigrated, but they never really practiced the faith.
Yeah. And there is also that thing, when you are an immigrant and you move from one country to another, you tend to find the people that are similar to you and to get you help adjust, to the new environment. So that's what we always were attracted to, for these reasons, but also for practical reason. When you're Orthodox Jewish, you keep the Sabbath, so you don't drive on the Sabbath, and you have to go to the synagogue. So you have to live in the area where it's a walking distance from the synagogue. So everyone will live around the same area. So if you drove over there on the Saturday, then for sure you saw people walking around. I actually I used to live in Michigan, in Oak Park, Michigan, which is also quite a lot of Jewish people there. And we would drive sometimes to Skokie to get some kosher food, because there are some good restaurants over there. So some people would drive for 4 hours just to eat over there.
Wow. But yeah. I mean, it was a very prominent town. I haven't been in that area for about 20 years now. So I'm pretty sure it hasn't changed much. But then again, you never know.
Yeah.
So what made you ultimately, did you completely change your life, or did you just explore and say, okay, we're going to keep these parts, but not these parts?
Yeah. So being Jewish and Judaism is still important for me, because it's not just a religion, it's also a culture, and like the holidays and keeping kosher, just because you want other people to be able to come to your home and eat in your home, and things like that. And also, mainly because we were not in Israel, we were not surrounded only by Jews, but by many other people. We still wanted our kids to be able to learn, what does it mean to be Jewish, and what are all the traditions and stuff like that. So we didn't want to completely get away from that. Right. And that's what we did. We kept the house kosher, for example. The kids, we moved them to public schools, but they did take Jewish studies in Sunday schools and stuff like that. And we also send them to youth groups that are Jewish youth groups to get enrichment this way. We send one of my two of my daughters, they went to summer trips in Israel through these groups. And also one of them went to the one in Poland. So she was able to experience also, the history over there, the Holocaust history, etc. So it was still very important for us. And all our family is in Israel. So you can't really detach yourself completely from that. So it's not even possible.
Will your kids be going back to Israel to go into the military, since it is required service?
So they could if they wanted to, but they decided not to. So they stayed here. Some kids, what they do is they will go for like a gap year after high school before they start university. They also decided not to do that. They got, because they don't live in Israel, they live outside of Israel, they got this special exempt from the IDF that, they can still come travel to Israel without being snapped and make them go to the army. So they understand that people, if they don't live over there, it's a bit hard for them to commit to that.
Yeah. Well, that's good that they recognize that, because I'm not sure that every place would. If you're a citizen, well, then you should be doing this. So, what made you decide to write your book?
Yeah, so the book is completely fiction, so it's not about me, but it has some of my background and some anecdotes and environments from my background. Now, I always love to do stuff creatively. I loved painting, and I love writing, and I love doing different things. And it happened actually 8 years ago. I had this idea for a story. Well, it wasn't even an idea for a story. It was an idea of a what if. What if something like that would happen? The name of the book is The Resurrector, and it's a translation from the Hebrew words Mechaya Mitim, so the one who resurrects the dead. And the idea was, what if someone will come to a family or to a person that one of their loved ones is dead, and it will make them alive again for them. So I had this idea 8 years ago, and my daughter, she was in grade 9, my oldest daughter, and she decided to participate in NaNoWriMo. NaNoWriMo, for anyone who doesn't know what it is, it's the National Novel Writing Month.
In November, usually.
In November. So every November, for 30 days, people all over the world are sitting down and writing 50,000 words novels. So she said, okay, I'm going to do it with some friends. Some of her friends want to do it. I have an idea. And I told her, oh, I have an idea also. Let's do it together. Because I want to encourage her to really do it. She loves writing. I didn't know what will happen from that. But at the end of the month, I had a story. And then I started editing it. Now, the thing about the story is that I knew that it's easy to write about something so I put in the story like my background city and my background building, and I envisioned like how my different places in the city looks like, and then I put them in the story. So a lot of that is in there, and people, when they read it, they actually tell me it's like I'm taking them to that city, or even if they've been there, they're like, oh yeah, we can see that. We can see that city in there. Or how the apartment looks like, how some of the cultural or aspects of living are, and things like that. So that's what I put from me. And then also the characters. So, every book you have to create some tension between the characters. Something have to happen. So it's a family with a very similar background to mine. And one of the sons in the family, he is not religious anymore. So I kind of like knew how it felt. So I was able to also put myself into that.
And that's the best thing to do as a writer, is to put yourself into the character's place. So it's authentic.
Exactly. It's easier to put words in their mouth. It's easier to almost know what they're going to do next if something happened to them. And then it feels right when you read it. So that's what was important for me as well.
I mean, writing is like acting. You have to live in the moment when you're writing. If you're not, then you're not really putting enough emotion or passion into it. and there's a good chance your readers are not going to engage with you.
Definitely. And I was worried all the time because when I wrote it, I thank God my family is healthy. My parents are here with us. So I didn't have to go through this type of, sad moments in the life or tragedy. So that was one of the things I was worried about, that I will not convey it enough in the right way, as if someone that did happen to them. My wife, she lost her mother 6-7 years ago, so I kind of try to see, how she feels. But it's one thing to see it from outside, and another thing to actually experience it. I hope I will not have to experience it, for many more years. But that was the main worry that I had. Where with other areas, I wasn't so worried because I knew I've been there. I knew I've done that.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's like, if you are experiencing it from somebody else's point of view, you can, and because it's a close family member, you can kind of get the gist of it, but you don't have the full power. Yeah. But it still gives you enough as a writer, if you're good, to be able to pull from that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I hope that I was able to do.
Well, if people have complimented you on your book, I would assume that is the case.
Yes. Thank you.
So do you plan on writing more? I mean, I see your artwork behind you, so we do know that you paint, as you said. So are there more books in the future, or was that just a one-off thing?
I have more books in the future. I already started writing my next book. It's not related to this book at all. It's actually a book I wrote the next year in the NaNoWriMo 2014, but I never really edited it. I never worked on it since then. And this one is more local Toronto story. Also has a bit of fantasy in it. I like that type of strange things that can happen. Mm-hmm. I actually wrote it on the subway. So I wrote it every day when I was going to work and back during NaNoWriMo on my phone, and then sending it to myself and edited it to the master file.
Well, however you can write, that's the thing. Exactly. I mean,
wherever you can find the time to do it.
Exactly. Because there's a lot of time where it's like the idea comes and you just don't have anything else to. Mm-hmm. I remember before we had phones like this, I was working at a job at Montgomery Ward, which is a now defunct department store. Mm. And I was working as Christmas help in the paint and toy department, which why would paints and toys be in the same place? I don't know. But I remember all I had was scraps of receipt paper to write on. So I'd sit there and I'd pull out enough receipt paper and I'd go in the back and I'd write down what I could for my story and then tuck it in my pocket.
Yeah. Yeah.
But now, you can just turn this on and record and there you go. So
that's true. I mean, I'm not so much about, dictating and stuff like that. Even with messages, when people send me messages and it's a voice one, I'm like, it's a bit weird to me because I like texting or writing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, whatever works for you. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So what do you do besides painting and writing? I mean, what is your other passion? I mean, are you passionate in your job? I mean, you're a computer programmer, correct? Or software?
So of course. I started as a computer programmer, but these days I'm actually, I kind of, during my career, I moved to product management. And product management is the area where you kind of between the business and the development, and you find what problems to solve and creating value to the users, the business, etc. And that's really what I'm passionate about. I talk a lot about this also on LinkedIn and other places. I have a podcast with a friend that we started last year about products that product managers are using. So that's another passion that I definitely have at work. And it's really important to find passion at work because otherwise you're getting really, really bored. So I'm happy that I like that.
Well, I mean, besides being bored, sometimes it can become toxic if it's too bad.
Yes.
I did have a gentleman who is an inventor. I've had a couple of inventors on the show, and he talked about how he realized at a certain point that while he invents things, he's much better. He wrote a book basically with all the mistakes about being an inventor.
Oh, that's cool.
That way you don't have to make those mistakes.
Yeah.
Because there's so many people that think, oh, I got an idea. This is going to be $1 million idea. And he talks about the electric or the pot stirrer. He invented a pot stirrer. So you wouldn't have to stand there and make it. He's like, yeah, it didn't sell that well. He's like, that's my mistake. I'm thinking, well, I mean, for me, I don't like sitting there if you're making a roux or a sauce from scratch. I don't have the patience to sit there and stir. So that wouldn't be a bad thing. But
right.
most people don't cook that often anymore, I don't think. Well, with the pandemic, that might have changed a little, but
yes, I know.
So I know that there's a lot of news up from Canada right now about a trucking issue, about the trucking protest or trucker protest. That's not anywhere near you, though, is it?
No, it's not. It's more, in Ottawa and areas like that. In one of the days that they were driving to Ottawa, I actually was driving to Niagara Falls, and my daughter was worried that I will get stuck behind some of those trucks. But I was driving the other way. Really, it was more about coming back. I didn't see any of them, so I think they were already closer to Ottawa. So it's really different directions all together. But yeah, I mean, democracy. We do what we need to do. Some people, that's what they think they have to do. So we live in a good place, and it's better to have it that way. Although I don't necessarily agree to everything they said, but it's democracy, right?
Right. And I mean, democracy is people are going to speak out. That's why we have democracy, so they can voice their opinion. So
exactly.
Just like you and I do on the podcast. I mean,
exactly.
Part of that is our opinion and what we think. So ultimately, when you started talking to your wife about your doubts about religion, how did that go?
Yeah, it wasn't easy, especially for me, but also for her. It wasn't easy at all. It's a tough discussion to have. Especially that you're born into something, and it's not like I was in my 20s or teen. It was much later, and we already have kids and etc. And all of our friends are in this environment, so it wasn't easy. But it's I think love conquers everything at the end. So that was really my luck that she really loves me, and she our relationship was much more important than anything else in our family, and I think that every person at the end of the day have doubts or they have questions. Some of them just it's very easy for them to live with them. They just dust it away and they continue their life. And some of them, if it happens that, either internally, like it happened to me, or externally, like someone kind of forced her to look into it and really put it under a magnifying glass and think about it and think what she wants, then, people can change, or they can change the way that they think, or they can evolve or become, I actually usually say that people don't change, but I'm kind of like, I think that I didn't change in many other ways. I think it's more like I said before, evolving, or more like adjusting. To change it's very hard, especially if things that we are doing since we were little, and not so much talking about our practices or our religious stuff, but more personality or how we. Like, I'm a conformist, but to be a non-conformist is very hard for me. And that was like breaking that. So it was much harder for me than it was hard for her, because she's not that much of a conformist. So I think that's what helped me as well.
Well, and I mean, we sit there and we think, okay, this is how I'm supposed to be. This is, who am I going to disappoint now? By coming out and saying this, who am I going to disappoint? And that's a major thing, because especially the tighter your family is, the harder it is to come out and say, I know I was born into this, but I'm kind of having some doubts. For me, I live 1,000 miles away from my dad, and I'm perfectly okay with that. And we text each other every once in a while, but I'm perfectly okay with that. We've been like that for a long time. But there was still a fear of me disappointing him at a certain point in my 30s. So we go back to the 30-year-old. My 50s, I don't really care.
Exactly. And we're changing that way as well. As we mature and get older, we have to live our life. I mean, we can't live someone else's life all the time. And we moved from Israel in our early 20s, so it's been many years since we moved. And back then we were much more like, are we hurting our family in Israel by not being there? And also, are we hurting them if once this change happened? And we always think about it, but at the end of the day, you have to live your life the way that works for you.
Yeah.
Of course, if you don't hurt anyone, and that's where we're like, and especially growing up in this environment, the Jewish guilt is very ingrained into you. So.
I'm not Catholic, but I grew up in New Orleans, and there's a lot of Catholic guilt there. And my friends pick on me about, man, you got some Catholic guilt. I did go to Catholic high school, but yeah, we let very guilt. Similar. Yeah, we let. And here's the thing: who put the guilt there? Society, family. I mean,
and religion.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. I mean, my dad's mom, until the day she died, would read the rosary every night. So she was a staunch Catholic. Mm-hmm. The rest of the family, not so much, but I still got sent to religious schools.
Yeah.
So I get it. I mean,
it's kind of built in some of those religions, and it's very hard to break away from. So I hope I'm not giving too much of this guilt to my kids. That's my hope, but who knows?
Well, it's always, I'm not going to be my parents. And then somehow inadvertently, you're one day saying something to your kid and you're like, oh,
exactly.
No.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Again, another thing of getting older.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So I'm going to take a break right now and we'll be right back. When I discovered Buzzsprout, I was about 30 or 40 episodes already in, and I thought, I really think they have a lot of opportunities here and a lot of options for me to explore, but it's going to be a lot of work to move the podcast. Wrong. It was so simple. It was a click of the button, and everything transferred over seamlessly. And bonus, I got a website out of it, a website that has all my social media links for the podcast, and everything in there is central in one place. What could be more convenient? I mean, honestly. Then, besides that, a couple of clicks of buttons, and I'm on every major platform. It was simple. And, you want to build your audience. You want to be on every platform you can. And also, the other thing was analytics. The analytics were top of the line. So, if you have a podcast already and you want to move it, I would highly recommend doing it with Buzzsprout. And if you're new to the podcasting business, Buzzsprout is the way to go. And right now, if you follow the link in the show notes and tell Buzzsprout we sent you, it'll get you a $20 gift card if you sign up for a paid plan, which helps support our show, and we would greatly appreciate it. The only thing is, remember, before you freak out if you don't get it after you get one paid month, it takes 2 before you get that Amazon gift card. So, check Buzzsprout out. I'm sure you would be happy, and let's create something together and come over to Buzzsprout. All right, and we're back. So I want to go over, you had some messages that you like to talk about, and one of them is, do communities have the power to help us rise? Which kind of goes back to what we're talking about with the protest, with the trucking protest, because these people are trying to make a statement. They're trying to elevate things, I guess, to make people notice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So tell me your perspective on how communities can help us.
Yeah, I think that this is actually one of those strengths of religious communities. And I'm bringing that perspective from growing up this way, that when you are in that type of community, it really helps with the feeling of belonging, helping when you need help. Like I mentioned before, when you move to a new place and you find your community, it's much easier to find it. Everyone has the same goal, the same life cycle. You go through the same life cycle, so you know what is expected of you. You know what is expected of others. So it's really make life much more structured. And for people that like structure in their life, it's a very good thing. And so that's where I'm meaning by, it make you rise. I put it as a theme, as a question or a theme for my book, also because, the book is in that environment, and then you have this event in the life, which is a death of a family member, and then you're like, okay, so you have one family member that is a bit away from that because they're not religious anymore. And then you have the other family members that are still in that environment. They all come together to the same place because now they're mourning a family member. And then something strange happened to one of them. And then how does all of that impact them? And can the environment around them help them really resolve these issues? And I don't know if I even have an answer to that at the end of the book, because a lot of it is it's an individual journey for each one of them. And yes, the journey is always impacted by what they're doing with other people and how the other people interact with them. But at the end of the day, it's a very interesting question to me always. And it was always a question, when I decided to change my life, what would happen next? Does that mean that I'm losing that community? And that sense of community was very important for me as well. So it's probably one of the reasons why we still, we didn't move. We're still living in the same place. So many of our friends are still the same friends, but we still created a new community around us of more of Israelis that live here and they're not from religious background. I would have some of those friends back in Israel, but not too many, mostly from the army. But most of my friends will be from the same background, and that community that we kind of join into really help us also, kind of move on with our life because we're not stuck in like between.
Well, and see, something while you were talking came to mind is that when a person goes through a divorce or a loss or a move, they suddenly have to figure out a new community. They have to suddenly create this whole new relationship web because especially if they have to move away from where they're at, which you did, you've done that. So you depend on community to try to get you acclimated and situated and bring you comfort, because otherwise everything feels foreign and you don't really feel like you belong.
Yep. Absolutely. And I felt it a few times in my life, moving to a new place, a new language, and then moving to, and I did it, more than once, the new place, not the new language.
No, I know.
That was the condition when we move out of the state. We said we want to keep living in North America, but we don't want to learn either Spanish or French. So Toronto was the best next thing. But I experienced that, and then I experienced it again when I moved my kids, for example, to public school, and it's a completely different environment, completely different community, and I had to kind of like get used to it myself. I felt like a foreigner over there in the beginning.
I understand. I spent most of my schooling in private schools. The first time I ever went to a public school was I failed art because I had a conflict with my teacher. So to make up for the credit in high school, I had to go to public school for summer school. When I transferred up to Shreveport, I ended up in a public school. My mom gave me the opportunity to go to public school or another all-girl Catholic school. So I opted to go to the public school because I'm like, I need to be able to interact with guys. I don't want to be this little Catholic schoolgirl. So I got to take art again and I passed everything. So that's why I know it was a personality conflict. But, it was a whole fish out of water because the last school I had gone to that had boys was my junior high school. So now it's 2 years later and I have braces and acne and there's boys and I don't know what it was just miserable. I should have went to the girls' school, but I was miserable. But I mean, that's one of those things where it's like, you don't know. And I've moved several places, so I understand completely. It's like, okay, we're moving. All right, now what?
Yes.
And people think, oh, if you're moving, then you have a chance to just start over and everything's going to be perfect. No, you're still taking you with you.
Yeah. It's not that hard. You're not a new person. You're still you.
Yeah. And I think that's a big misconception about, I can go move somewhere and start a new life and nobody will know. Especially nowadays, the internet remembers well.
Absolutely.
I mean, back in the 70s and 80s, you might have been able to, but now, not even close.
Yeah.
So you talk, there's another quote here that says, are our egos binding us to that which is in front of our eyes? So explain this a little bit.
Yeah, that's it's that goes towards some of the lines in the story. So just to talk a bit about the story and what happens over there. So as I mentioned, there is this family. They're sitting shiva on what shiva is the mourning period, and for one of their sons. And the father, he is religious, and there is two other remaining siblings, a son, an older son, he is in the army, and he's the one that is not religious anymore. And then there is a younger girl, she's in high school, only girls high school, and she's also religious. And the father had this issue with his dead son, which I'm not going to tell what it is, because that will tell. Yes, it will spoil the book, exactly. But he didn't talk with him for 2 years, and then the son dies. So now, after not speaking with him for 2 years, the son dies. He really doesn't have any closure or anything like that, and then he gets this opportunity. With the Resurrector, the stranger comes to the Shiva house and he give him this power to see his dead son again. And then he goes through this journey in the book, which I'm taking the reader with him to kind of try to see what happened to his son and the things that he missed. He was there, but he missed them throughout the entire life. And he didn't really understand his son. And this is where many of us are either we're living within our own self and don't see what happens to others, even to the people that are closest to us, or we do see it, but we see it in a different way, and then we miss the point completely about how other people are feeling and what their issues are, etc. Now, this is a father and a son, and the father and son should have a very close relationship, but unfortunately, that's not the case with many people. And that's really what I was trying to explore over there about, hopefully is getting to it, in the book. So everyone has to read the book to see what happens. But that's really one of those ideas about don't wait until it's too late and see what's right in front of you while you still have the opportunity to do it.
Well, I think, especially nowadays, so many people don't have the time. So many people are so engrossed in either, their phone or being on social media, or, there are people that are working 2 or 3 jobs just to keep the lights on at their house. And the sad thing about that is, who's raising the kids? What family unit do they have? Yeah, definitely. And that's one of the things that is very important for us, our family, to have dinner with the kids every day, and to do things together, to go on vacations together. And it's very important. And then I like we talked about it already before, how we are away from our parents, and being away from our parents with this additional Jewish guilt or Catholic guilt. What are we missing that we should really do now before it's too late? So it's things that even if the relationship is great, we're talking with them every day, we are still, everything is good. I didn't see my parents for 3 years because of COVID, and it's tough, and I'm missing a lot of stuff. They're missing a lot of stuff. So
everyone can take lessons from that, and myself included.
I think though it also depends on how your relationship with your parent is. If you have a solid relationship with your parent, you're going to miss those things. And, if you don't, then there's a couple of ways this can play out. You can try to figure out how you can reconnect with the parent. If the parent if you're not going to reconnect, you're not going to reconnect. And then you have to kind of go, okay, this is the way the relationship is. There's no changing it. I'm accepting of it. They were the best parent they could be. I'm now living for me.
Yep. And that's true as well. It's like that with every relationship. You can only do your part. You can never do the other person part. And if they don't play along, or they're blind to it, or their ego is playing games, or whatever it is, there is limited things you can do about that. Right.
And I mean, you just have to make peace with it. Otherwise you're going to drive yourself nuts.
Absolutely.
And I think, COVID was a gift in a way, because it made some of us stop and look at what is important in our lives. Other people, it's made them unhinged, but that's neither here nor there, I guess. But when you see people we just had another shooting today at a grocery store. For what? I don't know. I only knew that there was a shooting. But when you see somebody like the Karens on social media yelling because somebody didn't do something, when did we decide that social discourse, that there's discourse, and then there's just obnoxious discourse that's being a little bit bratty?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where people don't really think. That's where they don't see what's in front of them. That's part of it. They think about themselves. They have knee reactions, rather than think a bit deeper or a bit wider than their own little circle.
Like the person calling the police because their sandwich wasn't made right. Why would this has happened more than once? I hate to say it, but
oh, no.
I know when I sit there and hear something like, oh, this can't be real. But then I know by having an insurance claim where somebody put an electric heating pad into a microwave oven and caught their kitchen on fire, and wanted the insurance company, meaning the product company, the heating pad company, to pay.
Oh my God.
For not only the heating pad, but the microwave and the whole damage to the kitchen, and did not understand why it was their fault.
Yeah. Some people are just out of the world.
Yeah. So you just go, okay.
And then you were like scratching your head. Why did they write these little words here about not putting it in the microwave?
Well, when I got that claim across my desk, it suddenly became clear as to why we have such idiotic warnings on products sometimes. Yes, because before I was like, there's no reason for this. And I was like, oh, yes, there is.
Because of the people.
I bought a curling iron not too long ago, and I would have never thought this. And it said, do not use on eyelashes. I'm like, are you telling me some idiot put this
out their eyes?
I mean, in high school one day, I was not paying attention, and I had my legs crossed, and I'm doing my hair, and I leaned my curling iron down, and I burned my leg. That was my stupidity. I admit that.
An accident, yeah.
Right. But to put it by your eye, are you insane?
On purpose.
Yeah. But to each his own, I guess. And, it's the big joke of somebody putting the RV on cruise control while they went in the back and made a sandwich and then got in an accident. Whether that's true or not, it was a Darwin Award. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. But the thing is, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yes, exactly. I won't be surprised.
Because people do some crazy things. So I want to go to another topic thing that you had is the unexpected lurking around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
So is that referring to like death, or is that referring to an opportunity?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it can go both ways. And it can also, goes towards the magical.
Mm-hmm.
I always tend to think about the magical and stuff like that. And I know, and that's really an interesting question also relating to everything we talked about before, about religion, because religion believes in a lot of magic and a lot of miracles and stuff like that. So what is, how much tolerance each one of us has to believe in stuff like that, and then to either take control over our life and situations, or wait for something to happen because we believe in a higher power, or we believe that if we pray hard enough, things will happen and stuff like that. Now, definitely there are situations like if someone is sick. There's this situation, of course, believing in a higher power and praying for the higher power to heal you is one thing. But also, if you will not go to the doctor and you will not treat yourself, then definitely, you're not in a good situation. But yeah, what you're saying is also an interesting point, about death as something that we hear many stories about people that unfortunately, departed way too early. Or opportunities that we don't think about. So there could be lots of many ways to look at that.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like we look at the world as, okay, it's only here and now and in this minute. And I've talked to women before because they're like, well, my husband handles everything. My husband handles all the money, and this is people that are younger than me, so they're in their 20s, and I'm kind of mortified by this. Because in this day and age, we have the technology to be able to share this stuff. Mm-hmm. So my question to them was, so what happens if your husband gets in a car accident and gets killed? I don't know. Are you going to be able to access your bank account? Well, yeah, I got the debit card. Do you know the passwords for the bills? No. Okay. Now, granted, he can write all that down, and that's fine. But have some empowerment, because things are, this isn't the 1950s where you have a successful marriage, so I'm not going to knock it, but marriage is not always successful nowadays. So you're going to have to decide. And like I said, if something happens to somebody, I picked my husband, granted, I knew he was on borrowed time, but I picked him up from dialysis. He seemed perfectly fine. Within 10 minutes, he would be dead. So I knew this was coming, but did I expect it to happen like that? No. So this is what I'm saying. You don't know. How many times have you heard about somebody having a coronary event out of nowhere and driving through something because they seemed perfectly healthy? Everybody thought they were perfectly healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I lost a very dear cousin last week. And she was battling cancer for many years. We saw her just before Thanksgiving the last time. And we were like, we don't know. My wife said, we don't know if we're going to see her again. And I was like, no, of course we'll see her. I was very like, nothing could happen. It's like, I kind of like, I knew that she's, she's very sick, and I knew she's battling it. And I knew that right now the doctor said there is nothing to do anymore. But I thought she will have, at least another year or two. And she passed away last week. And I was like, as much as I was supposed to be prepared for that, I wasn't.
No. Yeah. Nothing ever prepares you for it. I don't care how well you think you're prepared for it. Nothing ever truly prepares you for it, unless you are sitting in the hospital room next to the person when they take their last breath and you've been there for a bit. That is the only thing that will prepare you, because the inevitable is there. But if they are appearing normal, no.
Yeah.
Because your mind has that way of putting it in denial.
Of course, absolutely. We don't want to believe it will happen.
Right.
Absolutely.
We try to sugarcoat things so we can keep going, and just one more day, we'll have one more day. That's it. The next day. I can't tell you how many times, and I didn't know about that I was living my life this way. The stress and anxiety that you put yourself under when you're living with somebody terminally ill, you're like, okay, we made it today. Tomorrow will be fine. I hope, in the back of your head, you're going, I hope I don't wake up and find him dead in bed, because you don't know. So there's always these little thoughts And it's insane and intense.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Anyway, is there anything that we have not talked about that you would like to cover?
We covered a lot of stuff, so not really. I mean, I think that I hope people will, go buy the book and and enjoy it, and get in touch with me, because I would love to. That's one of the things that I really enjoy, seeing how I create value to people. So throughout my career, when I build a product, it's about creating value to the users. When I painted, it's about making people happy with this painting. When I write, it's about would they enjoy the book. So sometimes it's very hard when you put it out there and you don't give. It's like all crickets, or people maybe enjoying it, but they don't even come back and telling you.
Yes.
So I love it when people do come back and they said how it affected them, how it impacted them, if they liked it. Even if they didn't like it, it's better than, if they don't come back and say something.
True. I mean, it's better if if they're going to give you a 1 star and no comments, or 3 stars and no comments, you can't improve as a writer. So people really need to leave some kind of feedback, because it helps. It helps you make you a better writer.
Exactly. And that's what I hope. I want to continue writing. I have that other book that I want to finish this year. That's my goal, to complete it this year. Maybe publish it even this year, but I worked on this one. I will publish it in the beginning of January. So it's fine if I will publish that one also in January next year. But definitely to get feedback from people is, and that's actually how I plan to do this second book. I'm planning to pick up, people that will be interested, of course, to do that. They can reach out to me, and I'm going to pick up around 20 or 25 people that I will send them each chapter as I write it or as I finish editing it for their review, and to get their feedback on the chapter. So this way they can read the entire book as I write it, but give me the feedback, and then I will rewrite or revise it based on all the feedback to make it a much better book.
So you're looking for beta readers?
I'm looking for beta readers, but not at the end when I finish the book, but as I write it.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm trying to make it even kind of like, I don't know if deeper or more interactive, or I'm trying to apply also things that I do at work for product management. I'm trying to think about it as a product. How can I get feedback as soon as I can, and based on the feedback, make it better, faster. So that's the idea.
The only thing I will say is just make sure you vet them, because you don't want your book on a pirate site.
Mm-hmm. Yes, true. So I need to pick up the people that I know. So that will be easier. Because I pre-sold my first book, I'm trying to reach out to that community first. So I pre-sold it to, most of them were people that I know. Maybe 90% or 95% are people that I knew. And a few of them also were the beta for the Resurrector. But that was when I had the full manuscript.
Yeah. Well, I thank you for your time and coming on the show. And I wish you great success in all your endeavors.
Thank you so much. That was a pleasure. I really enjoyed it.
So, Moshe, we had an interesting conversation. Having faith for so long and doing these traditions for so long, and then deciding one day, hey, maybe this isn't for me. I think that we do that a lot in our lives. We sit back and, maybe there's a food you used to eat. And I know this is really making this a microcosmic thing, but maybe there was something that your parents made that you absolutely deplored. My mother used to make vegetable soup, and she used to use veg-all, canned veg-all. And I remember every time she'd make the soup, I was just like, oh, great. I'd go find the meat that was in the pot and fix that and eat that. But the vegetables were just not something I wanted. And for anybody that likes veg-all, I'm sorry, but that's just me. But it was something that, the last time I had it, I can't tell you. And I'm glad I haven't had it in a long time, because it just wasn't something that I wanted. So when we start unpacking things, whether it be people in our lives, family members, traditions, whatever, there comes a certain point in our life when it like we were talking about, we have to decide that we're going to own our lives. And you can choose to do that, or you don't have to. It's your choice. And that's the thing about life. We have free will and we have choice. So I think that, his book sounds very interesting. I'm going to pick it up and read it because, we all go through these things. And I think there's some common themes in his book that all of us can relate to. So on that note, yes, wrapping up another podcast. On that note, if you want to be a guest on the show, drop me a line at Donna, DAUNA, at better2podcast.com. That's Donna at better2podcast.com. You can also leave me a question, comment, concern. If you want to leave a review, you can go to podchaser.com or Apple, and you can leave a review for the show there. And if you want to catch up on an episode, you can find us on most sites, or you can go to better2podcast.com, and there's all the episodes right there, as well as our social links. So you can follow us on social media and get the trailers for the new episodes, as well as find out the weekly schedule of what's coming up. So I hope you have a wonderful evening, day, weekend, whenever you're listening. And I'll catch you next time, guys. Bye. The Better 2 podcast is mixed, edited, and produced by Rich Zai of Third Ear Audio Productions.